There's been a freeze at the CFPB. It's unclear what is going to happen next.
The Weekly Friedman, your source for the most essential information in the default industry. With your host, Adam Friedman.
Today I'm joined by my good friend and Friedman Bartolo partner, Zach Gold, and we're here to discuss some breaking news this week regarding the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Zach, do you want to walk us through what happened?
Sure. So, as everyone knows, there's a new administration in the federal government, and it has caused a lot of change to the regulatory environment. And one of those changes is that President Trump has named Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent as the acting director of the CFPB. And one of the first changes that were implemented was that there's been a freeze at the CFPB, and they've halted all activity at the organization.
For those of our listeners that are unfamiliar with the CFPB, can you just walk us through what it is?
It's a government agency that was created in response to the 2008 financial crisis, and it was implemented under the Dodd-Frank Act. And its main purpose was to provide protection for the consumer in the financial industry. A few of the things that the organization does is enforces consumer protection laws. It provides financial information to the consumer, like education. It has investigatory power, so it can look into certain violations of consumer laws. It regulates different financial products, and it can also take legal action. A lot of lawsuits are implemented at the behest of the CFPB.
Sounds like a big deal. How will this impact banks and loan servicers? Is there an immediate impact, or is it still unclear?
Certainly all lawsuits, all enforcement mechanisms would be halted right now. So we're kind of at a freeze, but it's really unclear how this is all going to play out. Is this a temporary freeze? Is the next thing that's going to happen is that the organization's going to be disbanded, for lack of a better word? It's unclear what is going to happen next. This just happened this week, and we're really trying to see what the next event is.
So do you think that if the CFPB remains frozen or is just entirely done away with, do you think the states will pick up the slack and impose those regulations themselves?
Absolutely. So we practice in several states that are heavy regulation states. So in New York, for instance, there's still an environment where there's a lot of regulation, there's a lot of consumer protection. I could see different entities and organizations filling the void, if you will. So the Department of Financial Services could step in. We could see even, watchdogs coming in and trying to file more lawsuits or whatever the case may be.
How big of a deal do you think this is? And I'm asking specifically for like banks, loan servicers, people in our industry. How big of a deal do you think it is?
Yeah. The freeze, I would say, is a little deal because this is just a pause. I don't think it's going to be a free-for-all where financial institutions are just going to say, okay, we don't need a compliance department. We don't need to follow any sort of protocols. It's still going to be scrutinized. There's still going to be concerns about public perception. There's still going to be concerns about civil lawsuits. But I think that if the CFPB is done away with, it's going to be a major event. There's a lot of compliance that is needed within various rules and regulations that are implemented by the CFPB.
So look, obviously, presidents are not presidents forever, right? Administrations turn over. Let's say the CFPB is done away with, at least under this administration. Mm-hmm. How do you think a bank or a loan servicer should behave or react to that with the reality that the next administration could reimpose the CFPB?
It's a very good point. I'd be very worried about changing procedures based on what could be or what will be, one administration's policies. I think that these types of regulations can sometimes look backwards, so past conduct can sometimes be punished. So it creates a bit of uncertainty, actually, in the regulatory environment.
Zach, I really appreciate it. You hopped on this very quick, so I know things are still evolving, and I appreciate getting all your insight. To recap, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau was frozen earlier this week. Obviously, we don't know exactly where this is going to go. It should have major impacts throughout our industry, and we're going to continue tracking. And as soon as we have more information, we'll make sure we update you. Thanks for joining Zach Gold and I on the Weekly Friedman, your source for the most essential information in the default industry. Thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you next time.